Dance Arts of Columbia provides fitness fun for everyone from 3 years old to adults. Dance Arts is a good environment where the friendly staff makes you feel comfortable. Dance Arts feels that dance is an art form that you can experience firsthand by learning tap, jazz, modern, musical theater, lyrical, and ballet. Dance Arts urges you to enjoy a sense of accomplishment while getting fit and having fun. For class information, call 875-1569. Dance Arts of Columbia, serving Columbia since 1979.
Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends. Happy Labor Day. This is Monday, the first day of September 2014. It's Labor Day, and we have Larry Brown with us. Singer,
good morning.
Songwriter, storyteller, all-around nice guy.
Laborer.
You're a laborer, too.
Yes,
right.
I'm a laborer.
Good to have you, Larry. So what are you doing on Labor Day today?
Oh, we're going to probably spend some time
telling stories?
Picnic. I think I have to serve food, I think.
And maybe throw in a story or two. But anyway, you're on Radio Friends this morning. It is Labor Day, and you have a story for us.
Yes, I do.
Does Labor Day work into this story?
Well, we'll work it in.
Okay. All right. So here is Larry Brown with a story on Labor Day.
It was in the spring, April, I think, just a few years ago. Outside of my window, a noise awakened my wife and I. Now, we live right at the edge of the woods over in Callaway County, and we're used to things happening in the woods, but this was a strange sound, kind of something was working his way across the yard, and we looked out, and it was a giant snapping turtle. Just slowly, like a tank moving across the yard. Well, watched him, and later I was getting up and getting ready to go into town, and I thought I'd check on him, and he'd gone down in our backyard, crossed the creek, and headed out. And as I was going toward the car, I heard this horrible noise. He'd gotten into the chicken yard. He'd pushed through the fence. The chickens were all squawking and yelling. I ran out there, and there was the rooster defending, of course, the chicken herd, really working hard at that in labor against this giant turtle that was coming in there. So I went and got a board, and I kind of pried him apart and rolled the turtle out of the yard and got the fence put back together. Thought, okay, that's over with. Then I realized he was headed right for the garden. And I just put the garden in. He was going to go through the fence and mess up stuff, so back I am out. Have you ever tried to herd a snapping turtle? Well, they just kind of, snap at you. They don't withdraw their hands and their feet and their head like a little terrapin does. And you can roll them over, and they roll right back over. But I finally got him around the edge of the garden and thought, well, that's over with. I had forgotten about that, and a few days later I was walking around the garden, and there was a hole dug sort of at the edge of the garden, and I was kicking it in. As I was kicking the dirt in, because some animal had dug it up, I noticed what I thought it looked like a ping pong ball had been torn apart. And I realized that those were turtle eggs, that snapping turtle was not a he, it was a she. She'd buried her eggs and gone off, and something else had dug them up, and I found one intact. I thought, oh, I bet I could hatch this out. That would be a labor of love. And so I called up my friend Jeff and said, can you hatch out a snapping turtle egg? He says, sure, just get a bucket, fill it with dirt, bury it in there. In a few days, it'll come out, and then you got one. Well, I did that. But when I got home one day, there in the top of that bucket, right out of the dirt, was a creature that did not look like a snapping turtle. Well, I mean, he had the jaws, but his front feet were kind of short like this, and his back legs were long, and he had no shell. He had kind of a ridge down the back. And so I called up Jeff, and I described, and he says, oh, it's probably some kind of deformity. That happens, and in the natural world, the forces take care of it, and he won't survive. And so just let it go. But, since I had labored so much hatching out this egg, I thought, well, I can't do that. And I said, what do you feed it? He says, oh, they eat anything. Well, I fed the little thing for weeks and weeks, and it was growing, getting taller, and just ugly, and not very friendly. Finally, it was getting too big. I decided I would build a cage outside, so I made a little chicken wire cage outside, and I'd take food out to him, and he would just kind of, not friendly at all, and feeding it stuff, hamburger, leftovers, whatever. The thing kept growing and growing, getting up pretty tall, and ferocious, and I was kind of worried about that. And my wife brought home a book one day that our grandchildren were reading on dinosaurs, and she said, "Look at page 87." I opened it up to page 87, and there it was. It was called a Gallimimus, from the Latin and the Greek, gall and Mimas looks like a rooster. And then I realized that encounter between that rooster and that snapping turtle had probably released something deep in the genetics, and I'd hatched out a dinosaur. I called up my friend Jeff and said, what do I do? And Jeff says, get rid of it. The government will be on you. Men in black will be showing up at your door. You can't be messing around with science like that. And says, you're not employed. You're not a scientific laborer. Don't be doing that. And get rid of it. And I wanted to, but when I went out to the fence, the cage, it had broken out and escaped. Headed right down my creek, headed down to Miller's Creek, headed to Cedar Creek. I read that book. I saw that movie, Jurassic Park. I knew what was going to happen. I'd unleashed a dinosaur on the state of Missouri. I knew what I had to do. I went back to the house, got my .22 rifle, headed out. It was easy to track. It had been mashing down the bushes and trees, and by this time that thing had gotten up a couple feet tall. Well, I finally spotted it. There on a fallen log, it had gotten up and it was looking around kind of... And I was lifting up my gun. I was going to have to end its life. And just at that moment, there was a kind of a growl, and I saw a bobcat jump out of the woods, grab that Gallimimus, and drag it off into the woods. And I heard the snarls and the screams and the yells. Well, I was relieved. My labor of love in raising the Gallimimus, and now my worries about what was going to happen was over, because the bobcat had taken care of the Gallimimus, I thought.
And I thought this was a true story. Is this a true story?
Have you ever heard of the genre called tall tales?
I am. This was a tall Labor Day tale, and I like the labor of love was all worked in there for Labor Day.
Oh, the work, building fences and hauling dirt
and hunting. That's a good story, Larry. That's a good story. If you want to see Larry Brown in person, you've got several appearances coming up, right?
September 6th, I'm going to be at Crowder State Park up at Trenton. 14th, I'll be at...
that's this Saturday. You're going to be September 6th.
Yeah.
Okay.
On 14th, I'll be at Sedalia for the Association of Missouri Interpreters.
Okay.
I'll be ghost telling at the Heritage Festival here in Columbia on the 20th. And I'll be over at Mexico at Walk Back in Time on the 27th of September.
All right. And if you want, if you would like to have one of Larry's CDs or DVDs or anything else, you want to contact Larry, how do they do it?
Or you might hear the sequel to this story, too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you contact me at brownstory@hotmail.com or look at my website, www.brownstory.com.
Okay, for more tall tales. Larry Brown, pleasure having you here. And happy Labor Day to you. Happy Labor Day to you. But tomorrow we're going to find out about the Tomato Fest that'll be going on at Bradford Farm. You ever go out there?
Oh, every time.
Tomato Fest is coming up. And Art News in Callaway County. Our program directed by Travis McMillen of the Reynolds Journalism Institute. Audio is Pat Akers from KBIA. Our floor director is Daniel Shapiro. And our assistant producer and guest coordinator, Uncle James Mauser. You're going to be driving. Be careful. See you tomorrow.